Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to the Game Theory reaction. This is the hidden truth of Afton's experiments finally revealed. Okay, interesting, because that's been one of the big things, just about, Fnaf lore for a while, was why was Afton doing all of this stuff? Like, why was he so insistent on experimenting with Remnant? How did he even find out about Remnant in the first place? Like, which of his children was the first to die? There's a lot of questions here that are, that need answers. So, and I mean, there are a couple of questions already. Like, literally, I'm looking here, and the first frame of the video it just says Docos. So, did Daco do something? Because I know he does a lot of things, having like streams and interviews with like people in the from like the Fnaf franchise, whether they be creators or voice actors, stuff like that. So, did Daco have like another interview with like a developer or something? Like, I'm not sure. Also, I don't know what's going on with this picture of Freddy they have in the beginning of the video here, but why is it seem like the textures on this picture are low resolution, like the model they took the picture of? Because for some reason, like the paint, like the red paint above Freddy's eyes is like weirdly, like not scuffed, but like smudged or something. It's really weird. Yeah, so they probably should get this thing started. So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it for some reason. Corner video link to my film theory reaction. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because my main goal for this year is to hopefully hit 5,000 subscribers, and at the current rate I'm going, that's totally doable thanks to every one of you that thinks that subscribing to my channel is worth it. But yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Dorco's Steel Wool interview reveals the true purpose of the most recent Fnaf book. Even though it's set in the Pizzaplex and focuses on characters we know like Gregory and Cassie, its biggest reveals are actually based much earlier in the franchise's history, and may reveal something very interesting about our favorite Urple killer.
Really?
Hello Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that's always gassing up the importance of tiny details in Fnaf books. And
okay, wait, I'm just trying to think. I haven't actually come across a stream of anybody reading the last of the interactive novels yet. So if they're more pointing towards stuff for Secret of the Mimic, I wonder.
And just a little while ago, we got ourselves the third and, at this point, final choose your own adventure style Fnaf book, Escape the Pizzaplex. It promised to be an exciting final adventure where we would take on the role of Cassie, who is playing hide and seek alongside our good pal Gregory as the animatronics go haywire in a prequel to Security Breach. Needless to say, I and most other Fnaf theorists were excited for this one. Maybe now we'd get some of the answers we've been desperately seeking to the very confusing lore of that game. But what we actually got was a lot more confounding. Like, the book is fine, but compared to the week before, Return to the Pit, even VIP, it wasn't really giving us anything in the lore department. We did get to see Gregory in action in his more GGY Dr. Rabbit state, hacking the animatronics and generally being a bit of a jerk, and we got to see Cassie's friendship with both Gregory and Roxy present itself a little more. But neither of these things did what we were hoping for. I personally was hoping for answers like, how did Gregory become a slave to Glitch Trap? Or why is Cassie seen as so important to this plan? But no, we got nothing of the sort, which is why it's taken me this long to come up with a theory. I've been scratching my head for ages trying to figure out what the point of this story was. What was it trying to tell us? And it wasn't really until the other week when I was chatting to friend of the channel Rye Toast about this book that suddenly it hit me. I'd been looking at this all wrong. Rather than looking at the characters we know from the franchise, I needed to look at the new character it introduced. A new kind of staff bot called the Reagent, with hoses for arms and a gas canister attached to its back that it uses to incapacitate Cassie in dozens of the book's endings.
Okay, wait, I think I have heard something about this special staff bot before. I can't remember where. But I have heard, like, but I don't know whether it was on, like, Twitter or the Reddit or something, but I have seen a couple of things talking about this weird staff bot.
Eventually, this thing is destroyed by either Cassie or Roxy, depending on the ending you get. Because this guy is an insecurity breach, so we gotta get rid of him so we don't mess up the timeline even more. But then the question Brian and I both had was, why? Why introduce him at all if you're just gonna have to get rid of him? Why not make it one of the other Glamrocks, or Gregory, or heck, make it the first modern appearance of the Mimic in some way? But the more I pondered and banged my head against the wall, the more I began to realize that Scott absolutely had a purpose for this character. It just wasn't to do with the current lore of the franchise. It was pointing to something much further back in the franchise's history. Something that we're likely to get a glimpse of in Secret of the Mimic very soon.
So, are you suggesting that we might see some form of reagent or react or whatever it was called? I'm forgetting now. Like, are you saying we might see some form of it in Secrets of the Mimic? How would that even work? Because staff bots are a very modern invention. I hope they are, otherwise there's a lot of retconning going on here.
The main thing we learn about this guy is that it has mysterious gas powers that it uses to incapacitate Cassie. Who's copying whose homework now, eh, Poppy? And so, just like with Poppy, the first thing I wanted to do to get to the bottom of this new character was to figure out what this mysterious gas actually is. Because when you call your character the reagent, that has consequences.
Okay,
a reagent is a real scientific term that refers to a substance or compound that is added to a system to cause a chemical reaction. And you know, if you're gonna use scientific terms to name your characters, we're gonna science the heck out of those characters. So what do we learn about this mysterious reagent gas? Well, the most standout parts are what it does to Cassie when she encounters it. Quote, your eyes and throat burn. The moment you move, vertigo seizes you, and you can't seem to make your arms move right. They're too heavy, as if they're made of lead. You blink, your eyes flooded with tears. Then everything goes dark. Cassie also mentions coughing, fuzzy vision, and dizziness in other parts of the book. So that's a pretty extensive list of symptoms to work with.
Okay, the first thing I can think of, what are the symptoms for mustard gas? Because obviously I know, like, eyes and throat burning, tearing out, coughing, dizziness. Like, I'm getting, like, very strong chemical weapons vibes from this.
Immediately, my mind went to something like carbon monoxide, the silent killer. It's a very common but very dangerous gas that, when breathed in, ticks a number of our symptom boxes.
Yeah, but not burning eyes and throat. It's like carbon monoxide is deadly because you don't know you're breathing it in.
Blurry vision, dizziness, loss of muscle control, and while it isn't often associated with coughing, that is a symptom that can occur in certain individuals. Eventually, all of this leads to a loss of consciousness and death. Plus, it is used scientifically as a reagent, so we're off to a pretty good start. But it's not quite a perfect match. Carbon monoxide doesn't cause your eyes or throat to burn, hence it's called the silent killer, because you often can breathe it in and not know it's affecting you until it's too late. It's also called the silent killer for another big reason that doesn't work with our mysterious gas. Its odor, or more specifically, its lack of odor. You cannot smell carbon monoxide when it's leaking, which is why you should always have a carbon monoxide alarm installed in your home to sense it for you. Now, I wouldn't put it past Fazbear Entertainment to ignore this crucial safety
and it's like, not only not have carbon monoxide detector set up, but actually have a robot scuttling around the Pizzaplex that's literally just spraying carbon monoxide out. Like, I know Fazbear Entertainment is, often shown to be rather careless, when it comes to safety practices, but that's just outright malicious, and I don't think they'd go that far, at least not willingly.
But Cassie does have something to say about the smell of this particular gas. Quote again, a noxious cloud follows in its wake. The thick, sharp scent of chemicals fills your nostrils. It actually repeats that point about it smelling like chemicals a few times throughout the book, which means it cannot be carbon monoxide. With the smell being associated with chemicals and the reagent being responsible for, quote, cleaning the Pizzaplex of organic matter, I wondered if this could be something like chlorine gas. Chlorine is generally used as a disinfectant for things like like swimming pools. But in gas form, while it can be used as a reagent, it's also incredibly dangerous. Just like carbon monoxide, it can cause lightheadedness, dizziness, blurry vision, and muscle weakness. But it also has the added effects we're looking for, like the burning sensation in the eyes and throat, which leads to coughing and watering eyes, and it has a strong chemical smell, typically reminding people of cleaning products like bleach. It also has another.
Okay, well, think if it is like used for cleaning, I guess that would make sense. I mean, with Fazbear, seemingly firing all their human night staff, I mean, and just having them be robots. I mean, granted, I know chlorine can be very corrosive, which, actually thinking about it, that might also be why you see in Security Breach why the animatronics seem to degrade so quickly overnight. Like, they're going in areas that might still have chlorine gas and stuff like that. Like, that might be just it where, they use the chlorine gas to clean, then you have the robots, clean everything up afterwards. Also, would be one hell of a security system.
The quality that carbon monoxide lacks. You can see it. In that previous quote from Cassie, we learn that she's not only able to smell the gas, but see it. Quote again, a noxious cloud follows in its wake. Sadly, we don't get any descriptors in the book about its color or anything. That would be way too helpful. But the fact that it's visible at all is important for us to bear in mind. And chlorine gas is visible, usually a yellowish green color. So why is this not the end of the video? Chlorine gas seems to be a perfect solution. The problem is that I can't get this clip from Rytoast's stream out of my head.
The tanks in the scuba room, they are labeled nitrogen.
But these gas canisters aren't just anywhere. They're in the basement of the Pizzaplex. This nitrogen is being used somewhere in the Pizzaplex. And the only thing we've really seen using gas in this building is the reagents. That means that the most likely suspect for the gas being used within Fazbear is a nitrogen-based gas, which, as you can tell by the name, chlorine is not. So we gotta try again. We need a gas that is visible, smells of chemicals, burns the eyes and throat, causes dizziness, heavy limbs, passing out, be nitrogen-based, and be some kind of reagent. This is becoming way more complicated than I intended. Who'd have thought that a game about a possessed animatronic murder bear wouldn't follow the logical rules of the real world? But I'm nothing if not determined. And
yeah, I mean, again, like, Fnaf, at this point, everybody that goes into Fnaf theorizing is in it just for the thrill, for lack of a better term, the thrill of the hunt. Like, I don't think anybody doing this truly believes they'll ever get, a straight answer out of Fnaf, but it's the process of just digging through all this, sometimes literal garbage information, just trying to figure out, like, oh, could this work? Could this work? Did these two pieces click together? Oh, they do! We have something new! And that's like, they start going on from there.
And so, I did what any logical, sane person would do in this situation. I looked up every single nitrogen-based gas that has ever existed and compared it to our symptoms. I'd like to say it was fun, but even the nerd in me was screaming. Well, as I crossed off options from the list, I was left with only one possibility. Something I'd never heard of. Dinitrogen tetroxide.
Dinitrogen tetroxide. Oh god, that sounds really similar to that, okay, I'm forgetting what its name is, but it's that voice that's like 5 times denser than air, so it makes your voice go like really, really low, as opposed to helium that makes your voice go really, really high.
It has a sharp and pungent smell of chemicals. If breathed in, it can lead to every symptom we've mentioned. As the name suggests, it's nitrogen-based, and while it is by default colorless, dinitrogen tetroxide has a fun little quirk that solves that problem. It exists in a permanent state of equilibrium with another gas, nitrogen dioxide. Dinitrogen tetroxide literally cannot exist without nitrogen dioxide, because both chemicals share a reversible chemical reaction. Dinitrogen tetroxide breaks apart into nitrogen dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide molecules combine to create dinitrogen tetroxide. And this reaction is happening constantly, not only creating a weird chemical concoction, which is exactly how the book describes this substance, by the way, but it also changes the color to a reddish brown. And if that wasn't enough of a clincher, dinitrogen tetroxide has one other very interesting effect. Much like the other gases as we've mentioned, it is a reagent. It helps create chemical reactions between a number of different compounds. But the type of reaction that caught my attention was that dinitrogen tetroxide can react with a number of different metals to form what are called metal nitrates. And these can then be used in future reactions to combine the metal compounds with carbon-based organic compounds. Now, where have I heard of that kind of combination before? Oh, that's right. Remnants.
Oh.
Yes. In this universe, the soul is a tangible thing that exists. It's not just some ethereal thing. It physically is attached to the metal, and when you melt down that metal, it remains attached, which led to the creation of the fun times. The soul is a real thing. And
Which, okay, so now I'm not like going to like argue the fact like, oh, the soul isn't a real thing, because we know in this franchise that it is. I mean, again, the whole premise of the first game was that the animatronics were haunted. So thinking about it, would you consider the soul organic though? Like, is it actually made of some sort of like organic substance? Like, is the soul made out of carbon? Like, how does that work? Because I would think that the soul would be more energy based, and then it like you have the energy bound to the metal to make remnant. But to say that remnant or the soul is like organic, well, I mean, I guess you need to have a living thing to make to have a soul. So I guess by technicality that makes souls organic. So I guess being technically correct is still correct.
if it's a real thing for us organic, carbon-based life forms, then it too could be considered organic matter, meaning that this gas, the reagent, it's all part of turning these kids into remnant, just like Rai theorized about in a recent video. It's also worth considering that Rai found these canisters in the scooping room of Ruin, and the scoop blueprints we got from Fnaf 6 revealed to us that the scoop was designed to inject remnant into animatronics, or people. For these tanks to be here, in that same room, it feels like they have to be connected. And so the remnant for the scoop and these nitrogen-based canisters are also connected. And when you think about it, it actually helps explain a lot about what the Mimic is trying to do. In Security Breach, during the bad ending, we learnt of 9 missing kids, but we've had no idea what happened to them. Now, thanks to Ruin in the books, we know that the Mimic has been copying Afton and his murderous tendencies. Like in VIP, we see the Mimic program present itself as a pig mascot and lead kids into the back room to be killed, which is pretty familiar. But what we're talking about today allows us to take it one step further. The Mimic isn't just copying Afton's killings, he's trying to recreate the missing children's incident in its entirety, converting their souls into remnants just like Afton did in the games that the Mimic was partially trained on. Now, listen, I get that all of this might seem like a stretch. Believe me, I do. Referring to
This is FNAF lore. At this point, almost literally nothing is a stretch. But, oh God, that, what was it, that dinitrogen tetroxide, is that what it was? Like, again, a gas used to make metal, to make, like, organic compounds fused to metal. Interesting. Well, I mean, I guess the whole thing, you know, like with Afton being a scientist and trying to, you know, figure this stuff out, actually having like some sort of, you know, scientific explanation on how to do it actually does make a lot of sense. Interesting.
the soul as organic matter feels weird, and even then, there's no way dinitrogen tetroxide would work as a reagent for that specific compound. At the end of the day, Scott.
I mean, again, you're talking about, this is what, you know, sci-fi does all the time. You take some, I mean, like, there's a whole, like, go to Star Trek, technobabble. You're literally just technobabbling FNAF at this point. Which, I mean, if it works, it works. We don't have to think, as long as we know what's happening, we don't have to focus on whether what's happening is actually realistic. Because, again, this is a franchise about harvesting souls to put into robots.
Scott isn't a scientist, he's a fiction writer. But at this point, he knows that we theorists will look at the real-life comparisons to find our answers. And as time goes on, it's become clear that he's trying to work with that and make the series feel more grounded. We've moved away from spiritually possessed animatronics to an AI villain. He got rid of sound illusion discs and swapped them for hallucinogenic gas. And that is what I think this mysterious gas is really about. It's him trying to find a way to more believably ground the series. retroactively explaining part of Afton's scientific process, so that when the grounded AI villain tries to mimic him, it's not having to suddenly go back to the old sci-fi and paranormal tricks, undoing all of that progress. It's not a perfect one-to-one because the kind of thing he needs just doesn't exist. But what does exist is close enough to make his point. However, even with the answer to this gas question somewhat solved, as I sat there staring into the void that is my FNAF whiteboard, I remembered that that was only part of what I set out to solve. Sure, this has been a fun experiment trying to identify the gas, and it's even more fun to find its connections to Remnant. But that in and of itself...
Oh yeah, and also wasn't Daco brought up to at the beginning of this video? When are we going to get to Daco?
Hasn't really changed how we look at this franchise, outside of the idea that the Mimic is now creating Remnant, not just killing kids, which is fine, but it's not exactly mind-blowing. It doesn't help us understand where this franchise is going, and despite all of this effort, I didn't feel any closer to actually solving the mystery I set out to. Why did Scott introduce us to a brand new character who, in the end, suffers from the classic prequel issue of having to be gone before the end of the book because he wasn't in security breach? Legitimately, at this point, I was at a loss. I was ready to throw this entire theory out and just act like the book didn't even exist. That was until Dorco's interview with Evan Lampe, the creative director of Secret of the Mimic.
How carefully are you putting the books in consideration of Secret of the Mimic?
We've actually been talking about making this game for a long time, and we were developing the game kind of while these books are coming out. It's interesting to work kind of in dual mediums.
Secret of the Mimic was being developed alongside the books. They are directly influencing each other. Once again, I'd been looking at this all wrong. Escape the Pizzaplex appeared to be about security breach, but in actuality, its story is supposed to tie into Secret of the Mimic. So I went back and watched the trailer over and over again, looking for something that connected this game to the weird reagent we've been analyzing.
Wait, oh no, that's a support band. I was going to say, it's like, oh, is that gas or?
And guys, I think I found something big. In this trailer, there is a new character, Dolly the nurse. Well, I say new. We've actually heard from Dolly before. During the first aid minigame in Help Wanted 2, there's a voice that speaks to us over the intercom that, in the game files, is referred to as Carnival Nurse, as in Fall Fest, which takes place in the 1970s, just like Secret of the Mimic. And now, we get to see her firsthand in all of her creepy doll-like glory. But tell me, do you notice anything familiar about her? The thing on her
split face.
Her back might just look like a normal backpack, but coming from the backpack are a pair of hoses.
So, oh god, so potentially you could have it so that you have Dolly, as she's designed, like basically designed to like gas and kidnap kids and like steal their souls or something? Ugh.
Hoses that then connect to Dolly's hands, just like the reagent. The reason we are being shown the reagent now is because we were being prepped for the new character that was about to be introduced, Dolly, who has a similar design feature and therefore a similar function. And that connection has some wild implications, because if the reagent is using a gas that helps prepare human kids for remnant creation like we suspect, that would mean that Dolly is doing the same thing in 1979.
God, I love this franchise, I really do. But at the end of the day, they keep moving stuff around. Like, I was, like, again, like, the whole question of, like, when did Afton actually, you know, start the whole, you know, experimenting with Remnant and, you know, child murder and stuff like that has always been a big question. But if they're pushing his, you know, they're pushing, you know, the search for Remnant and its research before the first bite. Oh god, what's that gonna do to the story? Because, like, I can't even imagine. Like, at this point, like, I joked about that like, a lot of, you know, the ultimate timeline that Matt Pat made is, you know, out of the window. But at this point, if they actually do this, if this is actually it, then basically at this point, everything from that timeline is basically thrown out. It's honestly nuts. Ugh.
What? How? Remnant came about as the result of Afton's experimenting with the animatronics after his son died and he committed the missing children's incident. Now I'm saying it exists 4 years before his son even died? That can't possibly be the case, right? And honestly, at first, I thought so too. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this change actually lines up with a number of other predictions we've made recently about the start of the Fnaf timeline. In my first Secret of the Mimic theory, I spoke a lot about Fall Fest, Fazbear's circus that ran throughout the 70s and 80s. Thanks to some tweets from the developers and my love of Shakespearean theatre, I was able to infer that Charlie's death and the missing children's incident were not Afton's first rodeo. He'd actually been killing kids for a long time. But what if it wasn't just the killing that had been going on for a long time, but the experimentation as well? In earlier parts of the franchise, it felt like Afton was always the businessman, while Henry was the animatronic genius. But as time went on, we were shown that actually William was also a bit of a scientific genius himself. However, in the fourth closet, he tells us that there is a crucial difference between him and Henry's designs, something he called the spark of life. Henry was able to make his animatronics feel alive, something Afton was unable to achieve on his own.
So if you can't do it naturally, you just need that. You need the artificial spark of life. Okay. So, I can kind of see, the trajectory of, Afton's insanity here starting to form. So, in the beginning, it was probably because Afton was jealous of Henry and his ability to make, lifelike robots. So he, through child murder and experimentation, discovers Remnant, the ability to harvest the soul and put it into metal, begins trying to use that to make his robots more lifelike and stuff like that. Now, whether that actually succeeds, he might not have actually succeeded. Then, his son dies, and things go nuts, where he starts using that research to try to bring his son back, and then his daughter dies, and just everything starts going wrong from there. He's probably ousted from the company eventually, and then possibly years later, he comes back to the FNAF 1 location, and he takes apart those bots either as a loose end or as a source of remnant metal that he can get his hands on relatively easily, since he doesn't have the resources of the company anymore at his disposal. I mean, there might be, more than a few holes in that, timeline, obviously, but I could definitely see it working.
But he was desperate to figure it out. So why wouldn't he begin experimenting, trying to figure out how to get life into his animatronic creations? Back in my initial theory, I didn't really have much of an explanation as to why Afton was killing all those years ago, other than he was just a bad man. But this would actually give it some level of purpose. He's not killing aimlessly or for fun. He's doing it because he needs to beat Henry. I also theorized recently that Afton always had an accomplice in his murder. Based on the inclusion of a plush baby luring us to be killed by a yellow rabbit in Return to the Pit, which takes place in 1985, I concluded that we were being shown that Baby has always been there to assist Afton, even as far back as Fall Fest. I wondered if maybe Secret of the Mimic would reveal what that looked like, and well, Dolly could be the one I was looking for. She does have some very similar design features to Baby.
Yeah, the segmented arms and legs, splitting face plates, obviously just a more primitive version of what we see with Baby later on.
From the Funtime split face to the arm joints being almost identical to Baby's, even the medical symbol in the middle of her midsection looks similar to the fan that Baby has in her midsection.
Oh god, I didn't even notice that. You could have honestly, you could have just replaced that with, the first aid plus. You'd have to not make it red for fear of, being sued, but still.
Plus, they're both voiced by Heather Masters. It's a small thing that we can't put too much weight on, but I figured it was worth mentioning. Dolly would also be the perfect accomplice for Afton during the Fall Fest Carnival era. He'd be able to hide all his murders in a medical tent out of sight where regular people aren't able to go. He'd have all the medical tools he could possibly need, and in 1979, no one's gonna question the nitrogen gas canisters, because nitrous oxide, i.e. laughing gas, was still used in medical practices until the mid-80s.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, interesting. Okay, now I'm just wondering, because, I remember what the nurse voice sounds like in in like Help Wanted 2. So now I'm just imagining with like this sort of like doopy, sort of like semi-broken, like current like goofy look on her face. Is Dolly still going to sound the same? Like, hooray! Now let's give you a lollipop. You know, that's a sort of like really bored sort of like voice or something. Is that what she's gonna actually sound like? Because like I unironically love that.
And the cherry on top of all of this is that if I'm right, it massively changes Afton's entire motivation during the original series of games, and the oh so famous line that he gives his son before he dies.
I will put
you back together. This line has often been used as Afton's main driving force. From here, he would go on to kill some kids and learn about the secrets of Remnant. But I remember when we were writing our ultimate timeline, we kinda had to fudge the evidence a bit when it came to how he knew that killing kids would be the solution. The best we could come up with is that he'd seen it in characters like Baby or the puppets, all of which makes that line more of a hope, a desperate father just trying to save his son. But now, if the Remnant experiments have been going on since the 70s, this line becomes a certainty.
He's already seen that it can be done, and he wants to do it for his son.
The reason Afton knew he'd have to kill the missing children and put them into suits is because, by this point, he'd have some pretty solid understanding of how it worked.
But honestly, but again, thinking about it, so if all of this began off of jealousy that Henry just built better robots than him, and he does all this like unspeakable horrors, like harvesting the souls of children to put into his machines, and yet somehow the Fazbear still went with Henry's designs and stuff like that, seemingly, like, yeah, like that has to see like even like these like god-awful experiments and like creations he made were still somehow not as good as just the normal robots that Henry was putting together. And I just love that rubbing salt into the wound, that no matter like what horrible actions he did, Afton's creations just weren't still not good enough.
He'd been experimenting with souls and possession and Remnant for the last 4 years. When he sees his dying son, he tells him it's going to be okay and that he'll put him back together because he knows it's possible. He just needed some more test subjects like he'd had all the way back in 1979. But in just over a month, the day of reckoning is coming.
Oh, it's only
Secret
a
of
month.
the Mimic is finally going to release, and the past 2 years of theorizing is going to be put to the test. And there is something special planned for when that happens. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that announcement. But until then, guys, remember, that's just a theory. A game theory! Thanks for watching.
God, I had completely forgotten that that the next FNAF game came out next month. Man, Deltarune, FNAF, man, next month is going to be nuts. But man, I guess just the idea, again, that like all of this science, and granted, I mean, like I say, it's like, oh, they went with Henry's designs, but everything we've seen, maybe it was quite literally just experimentation. Like, Henry was still, you know, building and designing all of the bots, but while Afton was just in the background doing all these heinous experiments and child murder, just trying to, like, figure out all the minutiae and how to do it perfectly, so that he'd one day be able to make the quote-unquote perfect machine to, like, upstage his business partner rival. Man, actually thinking about it, like, I remember hearing something. I can't remember who said it, but I remember hearing somebody suggest that we might actually play as Afton in the next game, where, you know, maybe that's the reason why, like, oh, they've sent other employees and then you couldn't do it, so then they sent either Henry or Afton in to do the job properly and get the stuff for Fazbear from the warehouse. Ah, God. So much to see, so much to do. Oh, God, I can't wait. But yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.